There are certain songs that you sing in Georgian. So take me from the moment that you thought, well, maybe I would like to make the in winter album, let's say a Christmas album. It's 2 years ago, Christmas 2014. How did you pick up from there?
So it had to be done very much step by step. We couldn't, because on paper, you know, a choir from Georgia, a pop star that's based in the UK, a winter album that, you know, is to be played at Christmas time. It sounds very left field. Yeah. So I couldn't make any promises to anyone. And I couldn't say to the choir, you know, we've got to record this and we're going to sell lots of records. I mean, I don't know. No one knows that. So we just did it step by step. And I picked a few, initially I picked a few Christmas carols. Yeah. But what really was the trigger for it was realizing a lot of the great winter carols, you know, that are sung by choirs do originate from Eastern Europe. So for example, Carol of the Bells, which was on Home Alone, the original is from the Ukraine. It was written by a Ukrainian composer. And so we opened the album with this, the original version of Carol of the Bells. The direct translation is Little Swallow, but we sing it in Ukrainian. We also have a Romanian winter carol. And so for the choir to be singing these pieces, you know, that's their world, that's their tradition. But for me, I needed to bring the choral tradition of Eastern Europe, and then also add my, I guess, awareness of wintertime and what it means to me. And that means, of course, thinking about home, reflecting back on the past and all the traditions. And I've had a pretty weird life. So
you mean by immigrating? And
yeah.
Well, so there are songs that are not in Georgian, but also in other languages.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
yes.
because
I know. Yeah, we have a Georgian song, just one, and Russian, Ukrainian, and Romanian.
What is it for you? Because you also sing certain songs not in English. What was it like for you to sing in your native language?
It was.
Is it your native language?
Yes, Georgian is my native language.
But I mean, do you still speak it as good as you speak English, or?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. I do. I mean, I don't read and write as well as I do in English in Georgian, because I went to school for 2 years in Georgia before we emigrated. So I don't. My writing and reading is about the level of a 9-year-old. I wish it was better. That's one of my big regrets. What was it like singing in Georgian? You know what? I always had an idea of what I would have done if I'd have stayed in Georgia. And I thought that would have meant having a very traditional life in terms of getting married, having kids, and not being able to make a living out of being a musician. I really thought that coming to the West gave me the opportunities that I have, you know, to have got this incredible experience. But having made this project and worked with a choir from Georgia, my kind of vision of that parallel life has been really broken. Yeah, yeah, it really has, because they have a different way of working, and it's fascinating. And there's some things that are actually, I don't know, it's been so educational for me. And now I don't know if I would have. I think there is something bubbling there, and the culture there is fascinating.
So what did you learn?
One of the biggest things I learned was that romance about artists and musicians is all hocus pocus. And I mean, people are born with certain talents, but then to take it and to make great art, there is a method and there is a logic to it, and there is a way of reaching it, and there is a way of constantly improving. Whereas, and I know maybe to some people that might sound obvious, but in the Western pop music and the culture that I've grown up with over the last 12 years, there's an underlying belief that people are either, you know, brilliant and geniuses, or they're not. Right. And the ones that aren't, you know, that there's no chance that, you know, or, you know, it's unlikely that they can get better, and there's a method to getting better. it's like in the Georgia system, there's no romance about certain people being, categorizing people like that. It's like you do the work, and you do work in a smart way, and then you can achieve anything.
You said you started out, you had total freedom, but you had to find yourself again. In what way did you find yourself, your own voice and your own career, the way you wanted to move on?
Well, I think it's really important to not have too much pressure. Because we made so many albums in my 20s, and we built up an amazing independent record company in the UK. So we kind of had to sustain that level. And it's really easy to kind of go, we never thought about the sales, or we never thought about, sustaining that level of success. But, success is addictive. It's really addictive. And the adrenaline, when you do really well is phenomenal. And so your expectations, they become raised because you get used to a certain standard. And so when you don't meet the same levels, it can be quite disappointing. Yeah. So I had to, I really had to realize that I was maybe addicted to a certain level of success. And I had to kind of step away from it.
And when did you actually get this awareness? During the recording of this album? Is there a certain... It was
before the recording of this album, because I didn't want to make music that had lots of eyes on it anymore. Yeah. Because I think there's certain parts of work that you have to do. It needs time, and for me, it needs quiet, careful work. And that stuff has to happen behind closed doors. So it was important not to have pressure, and not to think, this has to sell a lot of records. Just to experiment and try things out.
Yeah. I read that there were 4 songs that you wrote yourself, but I couldn't find out what songs did you write yourself?
Okay, so Perfect World, yeah. The 3rd track, It's a Time to Buy, the 5th track, Plain Song, the 6th track, yeah. And Dreams on Fire, the 1st single.
The Perfect World track, who do you sing about? Because it's a line, it hurts watching you get what you don't deserve, and do you want to share it, or?
I can share it. It was something that happened in my extended family, and it was a horrible thing that happened, and I don't know, I feel that was what triggered the actual writing of the song. But when I sing it now, there's a lot of different situations that it tends to apply to, that song. I kind of think that's the beauty of songs. And I think it's weird because some of the tracks on the album are so autobiographical, and they're very specific to my biography, or what I've gone through. And then there's a song like Perfect World, which there's a sort of openness to it. And it's just difficult to talk about exactly who it is I'm talking to. Sometimes I think the song is about the record, the making of the record, and wanting to be, I guess, a perfectionist.
The other song, Dreams on Fire, is it about your now husband, or?
Me and him had a really funny conversation about this, because I was like, it's about a woman in a relationship and she's feeling insecure, and James was like, is that about us then? And I was like, no. But as a woman, you do sometimes feel insecure, and you do sometimes want a sense of security from, your husband or whoever it is you're with. So I don't think I can pretend I've got this steel kind of heart that isn't afraid of losing, her lover. I think we're always at a risk of that, aren't we? Of something happening in your world kind of turning upside down.
Every person is, even males. So
yes, exactly.
For me, if I go through your through all the albums that you've made, and I was thinking, was this album necessary for you to come to terms with your heritage, with your background, with where you come from? It sounds like it's some sort of logical step because you worked together with Mike for such a long time, and like you were saying, he was the older person and he gave you a lot of chances. But now it seems like you said you were more or less looking, and this was the natural way to go first to Georgia again, or
Yeah.
is it maybe too romantic?
I like your analysis.
Yeah.
I like your, and it makes sense. I just wanted to make music, and I just wanted to get better at what it is I do. You know, I had some people say to me, you know what, wow, I expected, you know, now that you're on your own creatively, I expected a real departure.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, it wasn't really about thinking about departing from a genre or thinking about it from a stylistic point of view. I just wanted to do what I do, but make it better and better and better. And I think there's still space to keep going.
Of course, but of all the paths you could have taken, you could have maybe worked with Max Martin, for example. I don't know. Do you know what I mean? You could have done so many things, but you picked this choir in Georgia, in your home country. Is it just like it just happened, or is it maybe?
No, of course it didn't happen. But yeah, going back home was very important.
Yeah.
But the reason why I went back home wasn't because I wanted to have some kind of artistic self-expression. It was because I think to make really good work, I mean, this is a cliche, but you have to do what you know really well. And what I know really well is singing. And I'm fascinated by the art of singing and how we express ourselves through songs and lyrics. And so this is what I wanted to dive further into. And I felt like going home and working with this choir. I mean, they're real masters of singing and, you know, the vocal art form. And I just thought that they were the best. And so I wanted to explore it. So it was from the point of view of what I wanted to hear, not some kind of a personal, you know, just making some sort of artistic statement. I think you kind of have to, I think the difference is between being an artist with an ego and, you know, now that you've got this freedom, you've got to make your own stamp and versus, actually, no, I'm just interested in good work. And it's like, what do I need to do to make what I do better and better? So that was the incentive.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
That's the stuff. Interesting.
Yeah, it's. I like your questions.